Hello everyone, my name is Suwarni. I am a student from TBI 6A. As the final examination of the courses, I made this video which present to my lecture Risnawati. So enjoy the video. So this video was contained to 5 topics are related to English young learners. The first one is what is teaching English young learners? The concept of EFL and ESL, the characteristic of English language learners, some facts about adults and young learners, theories of young learners' learning development, and the last one is learning style of young language learner part 1, which is talk about infancy, toddler, and preschool period. Let's take a look to the chapter 1, teaching English to young learners. This course aims to provide students with the theoretical and practical aspect of teaching English to young learners. More specifically, this course addresses issues related to theories of learning, the learning strategy of young children, teaching learning activity, the classroom method and technique to be used when teaching English to young learners, and also the development of games, song, and visual material and their use in teaching and assessment of English young learners. So who is young learners? A very young learners is start from 3 years until 6 years. Young learners begin from 7 until 9, and the late young learners is 10 until 12. So what is their characteristic? They are active and creative, like to play, learn through doing, and young learner have short attention span, young learner need repetition, and young learner need clear direction, also have limited knowledge about the world. This is the reason why it's important to know how to teach young learners, because age plays a crucial role in what we teach and how we teach it, since a young learner's class is different from an adult or teenager class in terms of language learner needs, the language competence and emphasizes, and also the cognitive skill addressed. We will move to chapter 2, the concept of EFL and ESL. In this chapter, we will define the distinction between English Foreign Language (EFL) and English Second Language (ESL) in language classroom learning context. It comes from the native language of the country in which instruction is being given. For the specific explanation, an ESL classroom is one in which English is the primary national language, or an ESL classroom is in a country where English is the dominant language. The students are immigrant or visitor. The class is usually of mixed nationality, so students do not share a native language or a common culture. Outside the classroom, students have a specific practical need for English and ample opportunity to use it. So students have extensive daily exposure to English-speaking culture, although their understanding may be limited by their language skill. While an EFL classroom is one in which English is national language, English not the native language, which means an EFL classroom is in country where English is not the dominant language. Students share the same language and culture. The teacher may be the only one native English speaker they have exposure to. Outside the classroom, students have very few opportunity to use English, but for some, learning English may not have an obvious practical benefit. Based on this explanation, we can see there is different lesson plan between two ESL and EFL because they not need the same thing. ESL student needs hands-on English lesson suitable for their intermediate needs. Meanwhile, EFL student needs lots of practice using English, especially orally. And then ESL student needs explicit cultural instructions. Meanwhile, EFL needs exposure to living English. And the last one is ESL needs bridge towards integration. Meanwhile, EFL needs a reason to learn English and motivation to stick with it. So, the difference between English as a foreign language and English as a second language is that in the latter instance only, English has actual assigned communicative status within the country. All told, there's a total of 75 territories where English has special place in society. Let's move to chapter 3, the characteristic of English language learners. Some facts about adults and young learners. Fact about young learners. First, they respond although they don't understand. They learn from everything around them. They learn indirectly rather than directly. They understand mostly when they see, hear, touch, and interact rather than from explanation. They like to talking about themselves and respond to learning that use their lives as the main topic. They love discover things, making or drawing things, using their imagination, moving from one place to another, and solving puzzles. They have a short attention span, which means they can easily get bored after 5 until 10 minutes. Abstract concepts are difficult to deal with. They generally display a curiosity about the world and an enthusiasm for learning language. Fact about adolescents: they commit passionately when they are engaged. Most of them start to understand the need for learning. Attention span is longer as a result if intellectual. They can talk about an abstract issue to a certain point, and they use many different ways of studying and practicing language. Fact about adults: they can engage with abstract thought. They have a whole range of positive or negative life and learning experience. They have expectation about the learning process and they have their own patterns of learning. They sustain a level of motivation even for a distant goal, which is difficult for the other groups. They can be critical of teaching method, or they may feel uncomfortable with unfamiliar method. And also they have a longer concentration span to continue an activity than the other group. This is the chapter 4. Theories of Young Learners' Learning Development. The outcome of cognitive development is thinking. The intelligent mind creates from experience generic coding systems that permit one to go beyond the data to new and possibly fruitful predictions. These children, as they grow, must acquire a way of representing the current regularity in their environment. Berners' 3 models of representation. The model of representation are integrated and only loses sequential as they translate into each other. The first one is inactive. It's from 0 until 1 years. Disappear first. It involves encoding action-based information and storing it in our memory. For example, in the form of movement as a muscle memory, a baby might remember the action of shaking a rattle. And then it is just not limited to children. Many adults can perform a variety of motor tasks: typing, sewing, assert, operating a lawnmower that they would difficult to describe in iconic picture or symbolic word or form. The second one is iconic. It's from 1 till 6 years. This is where information is stored visually in the form of image, a mental picture in the mind's eye. For some, this is conscious. Others say they don't experience this may explain why, when we are learning a new subject, it is often helpful to have diagram or illustration to accompany verbal information. The last one is symbolic. 7 years onwards, this develop last. This is where information is stored in the form of a code or symbol such as language. This is the most adaptable form of representation for action, and image has a fixed relation to that which they present. That is a simple representation of a single class. Education implication. For Berners 1961, the purpose of education is not to impart knowledge but instead to facilitate a child's thinking and problem-solving skills, which can then be transferred to a range of situations. Specifically, education should also develop symbolic thinking in children. The importance of language. Language is important for the increased ability to deal with abstract concepts. Characteristic of children learning style. The first one is auditory of language learner. Auditory learners might look like they're not paying attention when you talk to them, but their listening skills are more developed than their visual skills. Second one is visual of language learners. Telling these learners how to do some things may not make sense to them at all. They need to see it. And the last one is kinesthetic or tactile learners. These learners like to be active, involved in the learning process, and learn best through hands-on activity and movement. These learners like to be activity. These learners. The last one is kinesthetic or tactile learners. These learners like to be active, involved in the learning process, and learn best through hands-on activity and movement. This is the last sections of this video. Chapter 5. Learning Style of Young Learners. Part 1. Infancy, toddlerhood, and preschool period. The concept of learning is influenced by the psychological study of the learning process and is widely interpreted in the popular use. The psychology concept extends quite far and includes all parts of children's development, from language acquisition to social roles and change in their personality. Language teaching can be widely interpreted as all activity intended to facilitate and encourage language learning. At the beginning of learning the new language, the learner's knowledge has none or hardly any association with the language. It is as an infant learning its first language. And that explanation brings us to the end. I will close this video with thank you so much.